Hey, what's going on, guys? I know I'm going to spend a lot of today talking about the Pacific theater of World War II, but I'm going to talk about the Korean War situation, and here's what I'm going to talk to you today about it, okay? During the Korean War, there were 21 American prisoners of war that refused to go back to the United States. They chose to settle in China. Now, keep in mind, that is 21 versus 14,000 Chinese soldiers. Over 14,000 Chinese soldiers that chose to stay in either South Korea or the United States. Well over 14,000 Chinese soldiers. And that's about equal to the same number of North Korean prisoners of war that chose to stay in South Korea. And all the prisoners of war that refused to go back to the USA and stay in China, all of them eventually made their way back to the United States. So this is praising America. Also giving a message out to the Ferguson protesters and to people that are unhappy with the Ferguson situation as well as the Eric Garner situation, to show you that America's still a good country, and I'm not going to give you examples of what soldiers of different races or ethnicities did in the Korean War. That's not going to I think it's kind of irrelevant to the situation, but I think this is I know this is relevant actually. Clarence Adams was one of the prisoners of war that refused to go back to the United States. Okay? He was African-American, grew up in Jim Crow South, back when the South was heavily segregated. I'm from the South. White and from the South, yes, but I'm from the South, and the situation with African-Americans in the South is not a bright part in where I'm from's history. Any sane person can see that. Okay, so here's what I'm going to talk to you about. Clarence Adams was captured as a prisoner of war first by the North Koreans, and he talked about how bad he was treated by the North Koreans. Not given much food, had a disease in his foot. North Koreans didn't give him proper treatment for that. And he said it got better when he got transferred to a Chinese prison camp. It's one reason he said he chose to stay in China. He believed he was captured because his artillery unit was trying to cover the retreat and the evacuation of the white soldiers. And looking at the historical accounts, I believe he's right. And, okay, he returned to the United States, though, in 1966. That was during the height of the Civil Rights Movement. Yes, he was allowed to go to university in China. He got a degree from there. He married a Chinese lady who was a teacher and a professor of Russian, the Russian language. The reason he returned to the United States in 1966, though, was because of the Cultural Revolution. When the Cultural Revolution happened, China was killing anybody who was possibly not communist, and they were largely anti-foreign, and they killed a lot of foreigners during the Cultural Revolution. They would knock on people's doors and kill them. And his daughters published a lot of his of Clarence Adams' story, or his kids did. One daughter, one son, his two kids. They came back to the United States because they feared for their lives. Okay, keep in mind they returned to the segregated South from China because they feared for their lives in China. And right now, particularly North Korea is calling the United States a graveyard of human rights. Okay, first of all, North Korea didn't treat Clarence Adams very well. He notes that as a prisoner of war. They treated him horribly. He notes that. And he also notes in China when the Cultural Revolution happened, him and his wife feared for his life. And when he came back to the South, he joined the Printers Union. But when the Printers Union struck, and he didn't strike, he was given death threats by the union. He was threatening to get beat up. But he still felt that the United States was a safer place to raise his family than China was. Okay? People need to note that. People need to remember that, and people need to note that. And he became successful eventually in Memphis. He opened 8 Chinese restaurants in Memphis. He opened 8 Chinese restaurants. Him and his wife owned them, and he became very successful in Memphis. He worked his tail off to get to where he needed to go. I didn't agree that he chose to settle in China versus the United States. I did not agree with that. He also, when he was in China, he broadcasted a lot of propaganda messages telling African-American soldiers in the Vietnam War that it's not their war, they shouldn't be fighting it. I mean, I personally don't agree with that neither. But despite all that he did, he still thought the U.S. was a safer place than China for his life. People need to note that. Before, protesters burn the American flag, before protesters do any of that, they need to hear this story. Which is why protesters would not do that. And not all the protesters are doing that. There's a lot of peaceful protests that the media is not covering, which I wish they would. So, anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless. And bye-bye. Bye-bye.